So you might ask yourself, why exactly am I in a class called POLS 1101 American Government? And another way to think of that is, why are we here? Why are we required to sign up for this course? What is the purpose of this course? Well, some of it stems back to a thought process about free government and a free society that suggests that citizens ought to be educated and prepared to take part in the activities of the state, of the government under which they live. On another level, we all recognize that whether we decide to pay attention to the government is certainly paying attention to us. They're paying attention to us as voters, as citizens, as people who are uh, being required and asked to undertake certain responsibilities. And so when we're in here, we'll have a great opportunity to interact and to discuss politics amongst ourselves, or the political system amongst ourselves. But really, what we're here to do is to learn the basics of how government works so that at least we can be educated consumers of the world, that of the political world that is engaging with us. We all bring our own perspectives, our own values, our own ideals. I one time put together a list of 53 things that I had learned in 53 years, none of which included the things that I had learned in political science, but just observations about the world. And I suppose we all can do that. In fact, I'll encourage you all, if you want one or two bonus points on the first discussion, in addition to the prompt, I suggest that you list one observation about the world that you believe is undeniable, something that is an insight that might help someone else, but at the same time, you don't think it's controversial. You're not trying to divide people or prove a point. For instance, when I note that we have 4,160 weeks to make a difference, um, that's can be sad but true, or it can be a happy truth. But that's what 52 times 80 is. I think, though, that as we bring our values into this, one of the great things about learning information is that information becomes a resource to someone who has beliefs. And when you have the information and you have the beliefs, you can create a structure from which you can engage something like the American political system. Obviously, if you're learning to be an engineer, you might have talents, but when you learn a little bit of physics, it helps you be a better engineer. When you learn a little bit of chemistry, it might help you be a better engineer. When you learn a little bit of math, it might help you be an engineer. All of you, nobody's going to be a great engineer if they weren't first able to sort of conceptualize the process that they're going to undertake. But the tools make it so much, make it so much easier. And this is equally true, maybe more true, of so many other activities within our life, that we can't just go through it with our hopes and our beliefs. But when we have our hopes and beliefs and some skill, an awful lot can be accomplished. I encourage you to read through the 53 things I've learned in 53 years. But if you never do, please understand that what I'm really trying to tell you is, I am trying to empower the beliefs that you already have. We're also here because it's the law. Georgia law actually requires an American government-like course. It says no undergraduate student in any college or university shall receive a certificate of graduation or a degree without successfully completing coursework or previously passing a satisfactory examination on the history of the United States and the history of Georgia, and upon the provisions and principles of the United States Constitution and the Constitution of Georgia. And we're working toward that. You know, the ideal behind this, it was passed many years ago, was that people who went to college in Georgia would become good citizens. And I don't know whether that's going to be helpful in your particular case, but I do think that having that skill can only help you at least relate. Why else? Well, for one thing, this class should be able to, give you tools for critical thinking, an understanding of how the U.S. political system works and affects you, and will help you understand the concept of political socialization. Political socialization is the process by which citizens acquire their political beliefs and values. I remember being a very small child. It's almost the only thing I remember of the event, but I was at a Memorial Day parade in my mom's hometown. I ended up living there much of my life as well. And uh, and I was handed an American flag to wave. Maybe I am a political scientist today because I was handed a flag to wave. I was being told, where do I fit in the system? Well, I'm at least going to be a cheerleader for those many people who were marching by, celebrating or at least recognizing the sacrifices of people in our country. And I don't know, maybe, a lot of water's gone under the bridge since then, but the first people that you learn your political socialization or the first your political place is from your family. But this class will also help you to understand the American political community. In class, we're going to talk a good deal about where American politics stands today. Now, a lot of what we're going to deal with are going to be key terms and processes, how a bill becomes a law, uh, how Congress is structured, how public opinion relates to public policy. But some of what we're going to do is we're going to look at the political world today. Now, this isn't a current events course. Our goal in class is not to keep you up to date on current events. There's all sorts of websites you can go to look at such things, and I strongly encourage you to stay up to date on what's going on in the world. If there's a tsunami in Asia or there's a war in the Middle East, I encourage you to be aware of what's going on. Um, however, however, I also would encourage you to make sure that you pay attention to the materials in the text and in the lectures that are meant to be the framework for understanding all of those current events across time. The mixed results of the 2022 election are only important in the context of our understanding of how Congress works. Congress is almost evenly divided. There's a couple more Republicans than Democrats in the House, and there's a couple more Democrats than Republicans in the Senate. How does that affect the world we live in? There's a presidential election. How does that affect the world in which we live in? We're also going to look at organizations such as the bureaucracy, the Supreme Court. A lot of the life that we live is influenced by things like elections, but a lot of it is also influenced by the institutional structures of government that really don't change a lot from election to election. Sometimes this is frustrating when we say, hey, we just made a big decision. Why is it that we elected somebody and all of our dreams didn't come true? And sometimes we lose an election and we're happy. We're happy that it takes a long time to make dramatic change. In any case, we're going to talk a little bit about how what's going on right now is superimposed on those institutions and what effect that has on our lives. Frankly, we're not going to spend a great deal of time on Georgia politics, but we will familiarize ourselves a little bit. As January rolls around, the Georgia General Assembly comes into session. Georgia has a part-time legislature. In some states, the state legislature meets all the year through. I used to live in Michigan, and Michigan has one of the most, they say, professional legislatures with giant staffs and relatively high pay, and people are meant to be full-time legislatures. That's their job. In Georgia, the General Assembly officially only meets 40 times a year. Now, it's a little more complicated than that because they don't count the days that they just have committee meetings. They don't count the days when they aren't in session, but they're talking to lobbyists or talking amongst themselves. They just mean days that the General Assembly is actually voting on bills and stuff. Well, anyway, that's going to start in January and it's going to, usually it runs through about March with all their days off. Um, the rest of the year, Georgia's run by a complex executive branch where there's a governor, but there's several other independently elected members of the Georgia executive branch. And we're going to talk about that. And we'll also talk about whether Georgia is or is becoming what's called a purple state. Is Georgia a battleground state in this next election coming up? And we'll look at some evidence there. Uh, we won't really, though, spend a lot of time, probably just a couple days, on Georgia politics. And it's important, though, for us to understand the political community we live in because most of our interaction with government, surprisingly not enough, is not with the giant national government we have, but with the relatively smaller but closer to us Georgia state government. And we're going to be getting prepared for the 2024 election. I don't know. A lot of things happen between January and November, and I, I cannot tell you what I think is going to happen. But I do think that a lot of interesting things will happen, including some primaries and caucuses that will be starting um, for the selection of the nominees of the two major parties uh, during the early part of our semester. So we will talk a little bit about the 2024 election. It'll help us understand presidential elections in general. And uh, I, I don't know if I look forward to it. I certainly anticipate it. And um, we'll get a chance in our discussions to maybe mention it somewhat. So I wish you all good luck this semester. If you're still saying why am I here, why am I here, uh, drop me a line, and I will be happy to interact with you on that subject. In some level, you're here because you signed up, and I'm here because I signed up as well. So I wish you all luck, and I hope to have a chance to talk with each and every one of you this semester.